Part 3, which is called Let's Talk, from page 165, which obviously is going to focus on interacting. And there is an interactional hypothesis, actually, that states that people benefit by interacting, which is kind of obvious. But so now we have like a comprehensible input plus conversational interactions. In this case, negotiating meaning, clarifying, asking each other questions, expressing true opinions and thoughts, clarifying things, asking people what they mean or if they can elaborate on something, solving, as we talked about before, working on a task, and just genuine communication where you're expressing real things instead of like, I have a dog when you don't have a dog. Asking, have you ever had a dog? Or do you like pets? Or do you like dogs or cats better? And then that just becomes genuine type communication. And I like to give the example of, what flavor ice cream do you like? And, I might say, okay, you tell me you like chocolate ice cream. I like chocolate ice cream. Okay, now change chocolate to strawberry. I like strawberry. I mean, that's all structured and not genuine, but if I just say, what's your favorite ice cream? Did I say that? What's your favorite flavor ice cream? Then if they say, oh, I like chocolate chip, then we have sort of a real conversation going here, as simple as that sounds. We've talked about the student-centered classroom versus the teacher-centered classroom, and this is another example where it's student-centered, where the students are talking in groups, talking in pairs, and making a connection between form and meaning. So talking about form, but you're also talking about meaning at the same time. And it's like learners with other learners. And as we've mentioned before, sometimes students feel like that when they work in a pair, it's hard because they're both making mistakes, but they can't really correct each other. So they'd rather talk with a native speaker. And speaking with a native speaker would be ideal. But we're trying to do in the classroom, what we can, basically. And it's still great practice. And, of course, you're making errors, but you're still giving an opportunity to other students to practice. Learner language is a description of basically the level that the student's at. So if you're an intermediate student and it seems like you're making all these mistakes, but actually some people don't even call them mistakes because it's just that you have all these rules in your head, language rules, and you're following those rules. But some of them may, you might know a general rule, like ed is the past tense. So when you say like, I thinked, we say, oh, that's a mistake. You're supposed to say, I thought. But actually from the student's point of view, they're just following a general rule they thought was true, which was that ed is the past tense. So in their mind, they're not really making a mistake. They're just following the only rule they know. So interlanguage is the description, it's the whole system that the student has at that time. It's like an imperfect system. And it's generating different mistakes because it's still following like that imperfect system. So we can analyze their interlanguage and know, what types of mistakes they're making, try to figure out why they're making those mistakes, and then how to correct them. And one of the examples of an activity is where you have a map. I've seen a lot of activities like this where both students have a map of a city, but maybe the information's different. On one map you can see that this is the library, this is the shoe store, and on the other map, though, those are blank. So they have to talk and tell each other what different buildings are on what different corners, or what's across the street, or and then you can give directions too. Like give me directions, from the gym to the post office, and then they practice that as well. Sort of an information gap activity, or jigsaw. And there's a lot of collaborative type conversation. Sometimes one student will dominate pair work, one student will be the stronger student, and then so it's not really great practice for the other student who just does a lot of listening. So you have to make sure that both students have a chance to participate, basically. Oh, and even more so with a group of like 3 to 4, you have to make sure that it's not just being dominated by 1 or 2 students. In fact, a whole class discussion is often dominated by just a few students, so the teacher has to facilitate that just in the same way. Other activities like story completion, where you start a story and then the students finish it in different ways. Sequencing pictures, where they have to put pictures in the correct order of a story, or sometimes just pictures and they tell the story. It reminds me of, there was an America's Funniest Home Videos show where they would show a clip and then they would stop the video and they'd say, what do you think is going to happen next? And I thought that would be a great ESL activity, to show a video and ask the students, what do you all think is going to happen next? So I tried that in my classroom, where I showed one of those funny videos, and then when I stopped it, and they predicted what would happen next, and then we watched it happen. So that's something I stole from TV. People steal a lot of things from TV, like all the game shows, like Wheel of Fortune and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Those have all been adapted, Jeopardy, to classroom activities as well. And what's interesting is students, a lot of times, they don't think they're learning a lot from the group work. They don't feel like they're learning, not as much as they feel like if they're studying grammar, they feel like they're learning. And but they are learning. And it reminds me of, like in a company, when you take the employees on like a team building exercise, and you take all the employees outside and have them, have a water balloon toss or something, and they always feel like, oh, this is dumb, we're not really getting to know each other by this, we're not really building teamwork, but they are. Kind of like when you take young people like on a hiking trip, and for the purpose of teaching them, leadership and resourcefulness, and the young people, like they just think they're going hiking, but they don't realize that you're setting up like this learning opportunity for them. It kind of reminds me of that, like some of the teaching activities we do like in the group work.